there are several arts leaders in the room. You all may have seen a few weeks ago the governor vetoed a lot of arts budgets in the state, and particularly in Tampa Bay. But when he did so, he in particular singled out the Tampa Fringe Festival. And so we thought it would be important to hear what is it and why would somebody have singled it out, and what are the plans for the Fringe Festival. And then we could have a discussion about the arts in general and funding for the arts. Welcome.
Hello, good morning. Yes, I am Trish Parry. I am one of the founders of the Tampa Fringe, as well as the producer of it currently, both the festival and our theater that we have in Ybor. Yes, on June 27th, our governor, it was a transportation press conference, he was asked quite randomly during the Q&A about why he vetoed the $32 million in arts and culture funding for the state of Florida. And quite surprisingly, he said it was the Fringe Festival, this sexual festival where we do all this stuff. And we were very surprised. Of course, we were not watching a transportation press conference, so we found out within about an hour. And it was pretty wild to hear. I went on to Twitter because I know that a lot of that side of the camp are on Twitter, and I quickly found out that it was Tampa Fringe that was singled out because they had screenshots of our website with the show Captain Havoc and the Big Titty Bog Witches right there on Twitter for us to see. It was the communications director that showed that. So my Fringe experience started in 2011. I was finishing my master's degree in the UK in acting for TV and film, which I am obviously using to great effect. When a friend of mine was performing in the Edinburgh Fringe, which I had never heard of, and they invited me to come up because they had a flat and they said I could stay there with them. So I was like, okay, so I show up, I'm there for 36 hours. I managed to see 6 shows, I party multiple times, I try black pudding and haggis, and then I jump on a night bus back to London, which I don't recommend if you have motion sickness at all, and you're hungover, in the mountains, in the dark. It's not really a great, that wasn't a great exit plan for me. But I was absolutely hooked right then. The very next year, I produced my first show, The Awesome Show. And then the following year, I produced a show that I was known for called A Brief History of Beer, a drinking game, sketch comedy, which I toured all over the world, eventually winding up in New York, where I would perform it monthly for about 4 years. And then I founded the festival here in Tampa. So Edinburgh Fringe is like the granddaddy of all Fringe festivals. It is where it started. So if you're not familiar with Fringe festivals at all, they started in 1947, a long time ago, up there in Scotland, where there was a festival there called the Edinburgh Festival. And it was a curated festival, and all it was you had a bunch of artists that were local that were upset that they did not get curated for this performing arts festival. So what did they do? They set up their shows along the fringe of this festival. And so the Fringe Festival was born. It wasn't necessarily the fringe radical, the fringe racy. It was just literally physically on the fringe, and that's what that is. Today there are over 300 fringe festivals around the world. There is no man up there telling us, what our festivals must be. We do have a lot of conferences and alliances where we talk about best practices and stuff, but we are not in full agreement on what a fringe is. There's 3 different kinds of fringe festivals if you want to break it down. Number 1, they're all performing arts festivals, and they are all, in theory, uncensored and unjuried. So the first one is like Edinburgh. There's Adelaide and Minnesota. There are these very big festivals where it's open access, and essentially, if you can find a venue, you can do a show. And that's it. And that's why it's huge, because they will let anybody in, even if they're going to have an audience of 0. Then there are the lottery festivals, which Tampa is one of these. It was started by the Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals, because up there, they decided to copyright the word fringe, which seems a little unfringy. but it's fine. We're members of the Canadian Association of Fringe Festivals. The idea is that you keep it as a lottery or a first come, first serve application basis, so that you can still be unjuried and uncensored, but you can keep the number of shows down to the amount of audience that you potentially have. And then you have the curated Fringe festivals, which most people would say are not Fringe festivals, but in the spirit of Fringe and not censoring people and not judging, we accept them into our fold, like Cincinnati, Asheville, Rome. These festivals, they're all really cool festivals, but they're more along the lines of using the word fringe in its adjective kind of form, where they're thinking more along the lines of weird and edgy and cool. And they are very neat. I've performed at them. They're very cool. Now, what is a fringe show? Is a fringe show sexy? It can be. It certainly can be, but most often than not, it is not a sex show. Fringe shows tend to be about 30 to 60 minutes long, and they're kept affordably priced so that people can kind of run around seeing different shows of all different genres without really any risk of their time or their money being wasted. In trade, this means that the artists, by providing low and short shows, they will build bigger audiences because there's this trade-off. Shows can be anywhere from basically anything that can be on a stage can be a fringe show. So there's a lot of theater, there's dance, stand-up, improv, burlesque, cabaret, magic shows, clown shows, acrobatic shows, kids shows. There's literally man on a stage ranting at you for an hour shows. Luckily, I've seen it, but usually they're okay. Usually. We did have to do refunds one time. But for the most part, the shows are really great and they're all different. And what's really cool for me about them is that they're all indie shows. So usually they are written or devised by the performers themselves. So what's really lovely about the Fringe Festival is that afterwards, everybody kind of comes together in a big community, and artists and audiences and volunteers and everybody can get together and actually talk about the art that was made at this event. So when the governor said that we were a sex festival, it was, hurtful in a number of ways. Number one, I've dedicated, at least 12, 13 years of my life to this thing now. So number one, just not knowing, I'm always sad when somebody doesn't know, but it's fine, I get it, we're new, here in Tampa anyway. But we did send out a statement. We did a press conference in Orlando with the Orlando Fringe, wherein we wrote an open letter to the governor requesting that he consider supporting a legislative overturn of the veto in exchange for us rescinding our application for this fiscal year. And we haven't heard anything back, but we are hoping that at the very least we've advocated and explained what the Fringe festivals are in that letter that we wrote, and we hope that is good for next year. Unfortunately, the grants for next year, the application due dates were before the veto and the referring to us as a sex festival, so there wasn't really any, we can't really do anything about the grant applications that we put in for the next fiscal year. So we are hoping that there's some conversation, surely, okay, if this is an issue that we're uncurated, I don't know, where do you draw the line of because our funding, artists get paid purely from ticket sales. That is exactly how they are paid around the world, every single Fringe festival. Well, I can't speak to the curated ones, who knows what they're doing, I don't know. But they're not Fringe festivals. So, I don't know where the line needs to be drawn, and I don't know that it's a state's purview. I don't know. And that is what a Fringe Festival show is, and what a Fringe Festival is, and it's not a sex festival. It's just not. It's not. Some people are sad about that, but it's not.
All right. Hello. My name is Tracy Medula. I have a question for you. I also run a nonprofit, so I've also been affected by I don't know what I call them budget cuts, I'm just saying, the elimination of funds for grants. What are you guys doing to make up for that money? How are you dealing with it? Because everybody's dealing with it differently.
Well, we are a young organization, So we are, like I'm new to development, like I'm getting good at it, but you know, this is a bit of a hurdle. We're trying to develop more of a donor base and develop rather swiftly more, you know, getting in touch with more foundations and sponsors. We are doing a fundraiser right now, which is has a lot bigger of a request than normally, because this year, incidentally, was a very successful year for us. So we are trying to actually build our infrastructure, and so this is really poor timing. So we have a fundraiser, and after which we're going to have a really cool big party called Saturday School. So that's what we're doing. Do you have any advice for me as a longer running? How old are you? And your organization?
I'll tell you how old the organization is. I will tell you. The organization is Tempest is in its 15th year. We are doing two things to make up for the quarter of our budget that was eliminated, 25% of it. We are looking for private funding rather than union grants and grants. So Tempest is looking for $5,000 sponsors to help us get past it. And we're also, unfortunately, at the end of our lease, we're giving up our two micro galleries. So we'll keep our two big galleries, we'll keep our vision, but we're giving up our two micro galleries because we can't keep them. Where can people find your fundraising?
Oh, my fundraiser? It's at theater.tampafringe.org/fundraiser. You can also just Google search Tampa Fringe and you'll find the pathway.
What's your goal?
$20,000. We're almost halfway there, actually. I'm surprised, you know, because usually our fundraisers are much lower.
Okay, give us the website again, please.
Theater.tampafringe.org/fundraiser.
I'm Diane Egner, and I don't think this is working, is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Diane Egner, I'm the publisher of 83 Degrees Media. I've been doing it for 15 years. It's not easy either to raise money, but what I'm wondering is how you can turn that sort of messaging from DeSantis into a positive, how you can build on that. You know, you're the reason that more attention has come to the arts, especially the fringe arts. And you know, in the genre of no publicity is bad publicity, all publicity is good publicity. You know, how can you capitalize on that?
Well, I would say we're navigating that. For our fundraiser, we do have some cool, we have designed some cheeky merch that says not a sex festival. A lot of our artists want to capitalize on it on a more of a negative way, which I've tried to encourage them not to. Yeah, it's difficult. How does one spin it in a? It's food for thought, you know. Yeah, because I think a lot of people are afraid. So a lot of people want to just kind of go under the radar. So how does one tread that line of friendly conversation and playfulness? You have an idea? Give me your ideas.
The local association of ad agencies, I forget what the name of it is, somebody else may know, but they do an annual thing, Adopt a Nonprofit thing, where they have their young up-and-comers, their rising stars, do a special pro bono sort of thing for a nonprofit. You might approach them. They're really creative people. They're the kind of people who think of taglines for ads.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. That's great. I will definitely look into that.
So I kind of had mentioned that I'm running the state house, and of course the funding is a big issue. But can you talk for a moment, having been an advocate who has fought against Ron DeSantis and won in many ways. You know, I actually ironically won an award from him for my DEI work, which is the ultimate sense of irony. And you know, you can't spell ironic without wrong. You're welcome. I had to do that, especially considering, you know, here we're talking about Fringe, right? And Fringe is things that are on the edge. And yes, sex show is one thing. And him saying that it's like that is libel. And I don't understand. I'm wondering, my question for you is why hasn't your festival and other Fringe festivals band together and formed a lawsuit? Is this something that you're planning on doing? Because in many of my other communities, we have sued him on every single piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation he's created, and we've won every single one. We even just recently won a class action lawsuit for their anti-trans bill that they passed here in Florida the last legislative cycle. So, you know, you can fight back in the courts, and they've lost every single one of these things that are all the cultural war attacks. So I'm wondering what the thought is about doing this.
We've definitely gotten advice, both kinds, as to whether or not to pursue libel. Some folks have been very passionate about us suing for libel. I believe we could, but I gather that we would be spending a lot of public funds on, and it could take years, and DeSantis could be out of office by then. And I think that for the sake of advocacy, it might be better to try to work with the government than sue. And also I gather that because we can't predict our financial numbers in the future, we can't actually suggest how much money the government would have cost us with that slavery.
And the Orlando Fringe Festival published an open letter to the governor saying, forget about us, please fund everyone else. Have you gotten any sort of response?
No, I actually reached out to the governor's house requesting him have coffee with me, and I haven't received any response. I did hear back, like 2 different news publications said that his assistant just said, I refer back to my comments on June 27th. So I don't know if like he's too busy, or if we just seem like a yappy dog, or I'm not sure, but we haven't really heard back anything, unfortunately. Although the email auto response I got did say it could take a while.
So Neil Gobiel with the Gobiel Foundation, for people who don't know who I am. I was on a call with other funders talking about the Florida funding, other funders around the state. I just wanted to let you know that Jennifer Jones from the Florida Cultural Alliance was very impressed with the press conference.
Who is?
Jennifer Jones from the Florida Cultural Alliance.
Oh, great.
And she said her comment on it, she's impressed with what you guys did, how professional it was. And apparently, she said, so they advocated for the legislation. She said that they kind of caught the executive branch off guard. So she said that well, so they expected, I think, more of an angry, and because you didn't respond that way, they were unprepared for that, which might be partially why you didn't have a response, because they wanted to.
Well, in my emails to the governor's office, which I doubt they read, I even said, like, you know, we come from similar backgrounds. My parents were in the Navy. My whole family's conservative. I'm very good at having conversations with people. Please meet with me. They probably think I'm completely insane.
But I also wanted to say what else is going on with other funders. And, you know, I came off of that call a little angry. So, because no one seems to be wanting to. Sort of. So the general consensus was, a lot of them were like, well, we need to try and get more national funders involved, but no one has any ideas on how to do that. None of the national funders, when they see this as a local issue, no one wants to take on this. They all are taking the stance, or majority of them are taking the stance that this funding the problem immediately, everyone has lost this year, isn't going to solve the issue. We need to diversify. It's this whole thing you hear from philanthropy all the time. We need to diversify funding streams. They can be better run as businesses. But these are also then the same people who will say, "We'll give you $1 million, but you can't use it on staff." Right? And so I'd like to see one business that is run where people, the investors say, here's some money, but you can only use it on this. Right? And so anyone who's giving to the organization who's funding, please consider unrestricted funds because otherwise the organizations can continue. You're not making a sustainable model that you want them to be. So.
Yeah, a lot of grants require the funds to be used in very specific ways. Like back when YCDC had their grant, they really wanted you to spend it on marketing, which I mean is very useful, but also like, geez, it's a huge chunk of budget into this black pit of, do people actually see these ads online? Do they really serve? Are these impressions even real? Thank you very much for that. That's helpful. We are trying to diversify, but we're also just trying to build ourselves. So I know this is hurting a lot of other people in some ways more than us because we arguably have just crossed that threshold. So I already know how to work for free, even though I have 2 children and 5 jobs. So, and I'm sure most arts people do have all those things. It would be one thing that's a challenge for us, and I'm sure to a lesser extent is a challenge for other arts organizations. Is simply it's hard to get sponsors. Like I approached Key and Curly Farm about being a wine sponsor, and I sat down with a woman. She was very nice. I love that place. I still go there, but they're like, we don't know what you offer, so we can't really sponsor you because they're afraid of losing their more conservative people. Even though technically conservatives could totally apply, do a show. Ron DeSantis could apply and do a show. Yeah, it's hard with art, right? Because it's also subjective. You know?
Trish, I'm not a morning person and I may have missed this, but did you talk about the fact that you do actually rate all the shows?
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't hear.
Also, I have a question, but I'm sure you will discuss. Do you go for a mixture of different types of ratings? I mean, it's lottery, but you try and...
You know, that's an interesting idea, actually, would be to, because we have diversity lotteries, so before we do draw our normal shows, we specifically draw 1 or 2 slots specifically for LGBTQ, then we draw a couple slots specifically for ethnically diverse, and also a few spots for accessibility, disabled people, to make sure that they are included and represented in the festival, and then we do our general lottery. We do curate our kids festival because you kind of have to do that. But we don't curate the age ratings. We do always have a nice broad swath just as a matter of brandness. But that's an interesting idea would be to put another layer on it of, okay, we got to have this number. But then we would have to curate this number of 18 plus shows, and I doubt the state would like that. It's one thing if it just happens to come in. But that's an interesting idea. We do age rate all the shows and make it wherein people cannot go into shows depending on the content. We also provide trigger warnings for people who want that sort of thing, like we provide a guide or for sensory warnings. I will say that our age ratings are pretty tame. They're pretty tame because like there's nothing, just because it's 18 plus, there hasn't been a fully naked person in my festival. Essentially this whole thing about calling this a sex festival is like calling a movie theater that is screening Minions at the same time as they're screening Die Hard. One of those, like on 56, that place, like a sex movie theater. It's like calling Regal Cinemas a sex cinema. Really, that's what it is.
Hi. So this is all new to me, and it was really difficult for me to follow you because I have no idea of what you're speaking about. I would love to have seen maybe an example of what you're talking about so that so that we know.
They wouldn't allow me to do a PowerPoint.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, that's bad. That's really bad. So
I did bring some programs.
I see it. So fill me in a little bit. What kind of money were you asking the state for?
Oh, no, in the grand scheme
How
of
much
things,
were you asking
I
the
think
state for?
Our grant request was for, I believe, $15,678. The legislative, after the first cut, it was $12,600 maybe, and then it was nothing. No, it would have been actually only $7,000. So
How many people attended between June 5th and June 16th?
this past festival,
Yes.
I believe we had 2,400 in ticket sales, 1,800 of those were paid ticket sales. We have so basically our festival, at least the last few years, it's always in Newport City. We have multiple venues, and this year all of our venues were in the Crest Contemporary. And so we have kind of a Fringe central hub where you can go to buy your tickets, and you can go to buy merchandise and concessions, and then you can go to the different 4 venues that are in the building to see these shows. Usually, let's say it's a Friday or Saturday or Sunday, it's an all-day kind of thing. You could catch 6 shows if you didn't eat properly. And then like on a weekday kind of situation, you'd see 1 or 2 shows in an evening.
So I was trying to do the math and listen to you at the same time. But what I heard was 15,000 or maybe 7,000. And how many people attended?
2,400.
2,400.
The grant though is for our year-round funding,
Right.
not just the festival.
Five.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's,
Okay. So it's a lot. Okay. Thank you.
Number of people or the amount of money?
Per person.
Um,
Per person funding from tax dollars to support the effort. Seems like a lot.
Well, one has to remember that there's a lot of, number one, like over the course of the year, it's probably more like a 4,000 or 5,000 number person situation, and then the ROI on people that are going out to see art shows or visual arts or anything, they're usually going out to eat and they're paying for parking and stuff, so the economic impact is a lot higher than just their ticket sales.
Talk about that. Good.
Yeah.
That's good. Bring some facts to that.
Thank you. So I think, well, I had these numbers in front of me for a radio show I did, but does anybody happen to know, I feel like you would know, what is that number of ROI, that the economic impacts of the arts on the state of Florida? It's like billions, right?
The total impact of numbers?
Yeah, the economic, it's in that,
It's the economic impact.
the report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The economic prosperity report says by the Americans for the Arts. It came out earlier this year. I do not know the number.
Well, anyway, it's a lot.
So it's an Art and Economic Prosperity Report. Americans for the Arts does it every 5 years. The 6th one came out this year. And there is numbers specifically for the state, for the county levels, both Hillsborough, Pinellas, also the Tampa Arts Alliance paid for additional analysis to be done. So there's a city level analysis for city campus, you can see the economic impact. And the one thing to consider when you do look at that report is it's specifically only taking into consideration nonprofits. So it doesn't take into account all the for-profit arts and like music venues and things like that that are out there too. So.
Yeah, so just takes into account the people that are potentially getting funded. One also might suggest that those state funds are coming from tourist activities that are arts centered, and so in a lot of ways it's just like recycling the same funds into the system to keep generating art and making our wonderful city and state more interesting to visit. Also, we employ people. We employ like at least 15 or 20 people during the festival, and also all of the artists making their living touring and making art as well. So there's a lot of different ways that the funds make their impact. Yeah.
Kids programs that were provided recently, doesn't have to be this year necessarily, just tell us, the storyline, something like that.
Last year was, not this past year, all the kids' fringes are really awesome, and I take my kids to them. Last year was my favorite because I had more of a hand in it, where I created sort of a kids' fringe circuit, wherein I had different performances happening in all the different venues, and so the kids would all get wristbands, and their parents, of course, and they would go from station to station, either doing like arts and crafts, or they we always have this acrobatic group called Acrobellum that do acrobalance stuff. Or we had a musician named Paul Strickland who does a whole show about being a kid on his grandpa's farm and how he's just in this shed and he's so bored. There's a whole song about being bored. What's that? Oh yeah, well that was the year before that. No. Was it last year? Yeah, there's so many kids fringes. Either last year or the year before, we had this really great, we had an ex-Disney Imagineer did their show, The Everglass, which was a really cool puppet show, where it was like almost like an old-timey jug band of alligators and other swamp animals, but not like the country band Jamboree, but very Floridian. It was a very nice high-quality offering that we had that year. We brought in like opera singers we had a woman named Melanie Gall, she's a Canadian. She did a show one year called Opera Mouse for all the kids, where it kind of brings kids into opera, which is pretty hard to do. Yeah, we try to have like a nice wide range of things for kids to do, and we do make the kids stuff free because like one of our biggest points is to try to be as accessible and equitable as possible, especially to our surrounding neighborhood of East Tampa. Like this coming year, our plan is to make it 100% free. In the past, it's been free for people with Wick and Snap cards, but we decided that that's very gatekeepery, and so we'd like to just offer it entirely for free, so nobody has to feel judged when they walk in or show a card or something. So that's our big, actually, incidentally, funnily enough, our big thing for next year is really focusing hard on our kids fringe and really like upping the offering of works and making it really big and getting East Tampa very specifically engaged.
My name is Janie Carey. I'm an artist in the press building with Trish, and I would ask everyone in the audience if you're not going to experience culture today. I guarantee you at some point over the course of your day, culture is going to impact your life. And I will say it's normally one of the lowest budget items on any state, city, or county budget. However, in relationship to the Fringe Festival, I know that the Orlando Fringe Festival also applied for a grant. Do you feel like those festivals are different and they impacted each other in terms of the funding? And my understanding also is he said you might get funding, and so he couldn't control it, and that's why he eliminated the entire arts program. Am I correct on that?
I'm not sure about the might. I think what he said, I don't honestly think that he knew that there were 4 different Fringe festivals. I think he just thought we were one big Fringe festival, maybe touring around. There's also one in Fort Myers and Sarasota. They're very new. But Orlando's super huge. Like by contrast, Orlando Fringe would have probably, I think, they applied for like 150,000, and I think they were slated to get like 70 something, I think. But they are a much larger festival. They have about 300 shows, whereas we have 30, and they've been around for 33 years. What he said was like he basically inferred. He's like, well, I can't control the funding going to these people are going to get money, so like he just basically uses it as a scapegoat to explain why. I don't know. Yeah, it's really horrible. I mean, that's why we try to give up. We were like, we'll take our money back. Just give the aquarium their money, give the arts their money, please. Yeah. I know, but there's some, you have to be like, I know, because I mean, at the end of the day, there are people that are doing far more risky things than we are, but I'm not going to point them out because then, that'll be next year's thing.
Statements in terms of radical ideas in here to spur on conversation, but for those of you who don't know, I'm Bill Carlson. I'm on city council, but my day job is I have a PR firm, and our firm is 35 years old. We've been investing in the arts for 35 years. We've been deeply involved in the arts community and safety for 30 years, and we're in 4 cities in Florida. We're very involved in arts in all those groups. We see the arts as being very important for business, our business, and for the economy. And because we're a PR firm, we think about try to persuade people. And so my kind of radical idea on this is that we need to convince the business community and Republicans, and there's some Republicans here, that the arts are important and valuable. And some of you heard me say this before, but if you're a policymaker, like a legislator, and you don't have enough money for the basics that the public wants, if you invest in something that the public thinks is nice to have but not necessary, then they will not re-elect you or they will criticize you. And I think the way a lot of people, elected officials especially, think about the arts is if you can pay for mortgage, you can pay for medicine, you can pay for food, you can pay for your car. If you have extra money, then you can buy art for the walls or you go to an arts event. It's seen as something that's extra if you have the money for it. The other way of looking at it is an economic impact, which many arts groups have. But if you go back 5-6 years ago, remember we had a similar situation in the city of Tampa where a Democrat was running the city and cut the arts. And so 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we were all trying to figure out how do we make it okay for businesses and individuals to invest in the arts in Tampa. And so Café Tampa partnered with the Gobioff Foundation. It was mostly Gobioff Foundation. But we put together a mayoral debate on the arts. I don't think that was recorded, but it was a mayoral debate on the arts. All the mayoral candidates came, and it was the biggest attendance of any of the mayoral debates. I think 600 plus people. Great conversation. They all had ideas. But then following that, Café Tampa and the Gobioff Foundation put together the Tampa Forum of the Arts. And we went to Mayor Castro before she was elected and said, would you like us to call it the Mayor's Forum of the Arts? And she said yes, and cooperated, participated with us. And Jenny Carey helped with that also, and maybe some of you. But we did that event, and again, about 650 people came. You can find that video online, Mayor's Forum, Tampa Mayor's Forum of the Arts. It's about a 2-hour program, but there's a whole panel on arts, not an economic impact, but as an economic engine. And so you have artists like Dean Mitchell, who paints in Channel District, and he sells his paintings for $50,000 all over the country and all over the world. He's bringing money into this economy. He's a business. He's a very successful. Forbes called him a millionaire artist. He's one of the top black artists in the country. So you can think about it from a DEI point of view, but he's also an economic engine. He's bringing more than $1 million a year into our economy. Mark Ailing, who's a sculptor in St. Pete, has 10 people working for him. He comes up with an idea, produces these sculptures worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. If he categorized himself as a specialized manufacturer, he would get incentives. But instead, he's an artist. And so there's the industry of the arts, and St. Pete understands that. But then also on our panel is a senior level person from Agile Thought, and he said, our best, and this has been true with a lot of top tech CEOs that I've talked to, the best and brightest tech people want to not only go see the arts, but participate in it. Ask just about anybody that hires programmers, they'll say the best study, the best degree that a programmer can have is music. Because you can teach a musician how to program, but you can't teach a coder about harmony. Software writing is about how software packages work together. Well, somebody whose passion is music wants to not only go to the orchestra, but play and perform in programs like the ones you're talking about. And so, if you want to, economic development today is about the best and brightest people being in a community. We have them. If we want to keep them, and we want companies to keep them and grow, and keep them happy, we've got to have the arts. They're integral to our economy. And somehow we've got to tell those stories. And I'll shut up in a second. I'm on the board of the Florida Chamber Foundation. So is Nadine Smith. I think we're the only 2 people out of the whole board that pushes these things. I'm on the Florida Tax Watch Board. I think I'm the only one who pushes for it. We're also, our firm's involved in AIF. I've got a colleague who's Republican who's on the board of the Florida Arts Council. He's pushing for it. But I would suggest that we put together a panel and go talk to the young Republicans. It sounds like a radical idea, but let's go do that. We need to recruit the local business community. The Tampa Chamber used to have an arts and culture committee that they got rid of like 10 years ago. We need to show them that the arts are important again. We need to show the Tampa Partnership. St. Pete Chamber understands it. St. Pete Downtown Partnership understands it. But let's get the business community excited again about the arts and to understand it's not just how many people attend an event. It's that if you want the best tech companies that are creating value all over the world, if you want them here, you must have the arts.
And to answer that question,
Was that a question?
Public schools pays her property taxes with her art. She's not charging the money that Mark is, she's not charging the money that Deep Into is. She's making a living, supporting her children, participating in the community, and paying property taxes. And so, you know, the regular people are also doing, she's very good. It's not just, you know, pardon me?
you saying that's what I'm doing?
Well,
I mean, literally, I'm doing what you just said.
yes, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
It's not sort of just, I think we think of arts as there's a category, and there are human beings, and there are people that are participating in the community and paying property taxes and doing all that kind of thing. They're not just sort of names that we see all the time in the news, and it looks like they have enough money to support themselves. You're supporting your family, she's supporting her family. There's people out there doing that very same thing, just like the people in this room are in their own profession.
I think it's interesting. Conversely, like, so you speak of all the economic engines and high value art, but I mean, honestly, you walk through the streets and what do you see? You see architecture. Architecture is 100% art. You were imbued with a sense of aesthetics just through osmosis as you were raised, and that wouldn't have happened if you didn't have beautiful art around you. Even if you never took an art appreciation class, you were still just like how we kind of learn language from our parents, you know. And I think it's very, like for me, like I would say, like, you know, a lot of art organizations, this isn't their mission necessarily, but ours is about making art accessible. So I don't think it's fair that people, like, I mean, I can't afford to go to plays right now because I have to feed my family and pay my very high mortgage because I bought it during this wonderful market. So my whole goal and my festival's whole goal is about making art accessible so that everybody can partake in it. It should not be something that only the wealthy can experience. And I'll be 100% candid that, especially the performing arts, it is not a sustainable model on its own. It does not, unless you're charging over $100 a ticket, because you've got to have, behind every single performer, you've got a technician, you've got the box office, you've got the rent of the venue, you've got usually a lighting designer, a sound designer, a costume designer. If you're a touring artist, you've got travel, you've got accommodation. Like, it's insane how much money one has to make for you to just break even as a performing artist. And I don't even know how visual arts makes money. I have no idea. It's a very different thing. So for me, I would say that it sounds like a lot of money per person, but I'm enabling those people to get to experience art that would not have been able to do so if the ticket wasn't only $15, you know, or free for family shows. Yeah, so I think it's such an integral thing, right? Like, people don't think of Netflix as art, but it's totally art.